Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is another wonderful Tuesday evening here at Wolfpack Radio at the University of Nevada, Reno. For all you first-time listeners out here, you're listening to the Nevada Sagebrush Rundown, the weekly radio show where we discuss all the happenings on the campus and just around town. It's been a busy week for Reno and just the Nevada Sagebrush. We, as a staff, five of us went down to LA for the ACP Journalism Convention, and today we released our special dining guide issue. So there's been a lot going on, but we're actually going to be discussing those two aforementioned things next week, because this week we have the extreme honor of having the two vice presidential and two presidential candidates on to kind of speak their minds, discuss their platforms, and just, get the word out there. So throughout the show, we're going to be starting with the two VP candidates, and then later on in the night, we will be talking to the two presidential candidates. First up, we have Jessica Salsman. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's good to have you here. With me also, as always, we have Editor-in-Chief of the Nevada Sagebrush, Chris Boline, and Multimedia Editor, Terrence Bynum. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great tonight, Tyler. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. Terrence?
Solid.
Good to hear. Now let's jump right on into this. Obviously, the campaign has been going on for a while. You're hearing a lot, just more and more about it on social media. So let's just start off by talking a little bit about your campaign. How's it been going?
It's actually been going very well. I was a little stressed about it at the beginning, but I've been going to clubs and organizations almost every single night, lots of clubs, meeting a lot of students, and I've been getting a lot of positive feedback, so I feel really good right now.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as a person? Where are you from? What do you do?
I am from Las Vegas. I am a junior here at the university. I am a political science and linguistics dual major. I'm in ASUN currently. I'm the Assistant Director of Legislative Affairs, and it's my second year in the department and my second year in ASUN altogether.
What were your motivations for choosing to run?
It was a hard decision for me to run because I really wanted to run and I really wanted to be vice president. But just this campaigning season, it's a long season, so I really had to push myself to do it. But I mean, through all the work I've done, through my experience in ASUN, I've looked at it and I've said I know that I am the best candidate for vice president. I know I want to be there, so I did it, and here I am running.
So for all those listeners out there, what are your goals that you want to communicate to the students? I mean, and then talking about those goals for the top three, how do you plan on achieving them?
Okay. My first goal, I would love to increase traditions to be more inclusive of clubs and organizations. Right now, I think things like Homecoming Week and Mackey Week really are geared around the Greek community, and I would love to build a sense of community amongst clubs and organizations. I think it reaches a broader range of students, and there are so many students on this campus who could be involved in clubs and organizations, who want to get involved, don't know how. So I'd really like to kind of bring some school pride to them through these traditional weeks.
I know that student apathy is something that we often talk about a lot on this show, and it does seem to be one of the recurring issues that we do have on this campus. What are some other issues that you think UNR or just Reno as a whole is facing right now that you'd like to combat?
I would love to see the students in the Reno community more. Everyone talks about the university town, wanting this to be a university town, and I think the way to really do that is to bring students to the community. So I think next year civic engagement needs to be a big focus to bring the university and the community together.
Are there any specific kinds of civic engagement you're looking at?
This 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I worked on the Civic Engagement and Service Learning Conference, where we brought students to the university, to organizations around the community, and I've met a lot of people, great people through that, and I think we need to host another conference like that to engage the students, to bring them to these organizations in the community.
So you mentioned a lot of internal and external events that you want to gear around not only the University of Nevada, but also Reno. But let's kind of shift gears and talk about your opponent, Quinn Jonas. I mean, what do you think about Quinn as a candidate? And then also, what's your guys' background, personally and whatnot?
Okay, Quinn and I have very similar platforms, and both of our goals are very attainable, which is great. It's great that we both, can collaborate and have a lot of the same ideas. Quinn and my personal background, we're friends. We're not very close friends, but we are friends. And even through all this, we've both been cordial and great with each other and friendly, and it's been fun and light. So I'm thankful for that.
And then what's your experience been like going to the different clubs and organizations on campus? I mean, what are some of the ones that stick out to you? I mean, have there been any, really good questions that someone has asked you that, has kind of, maybe thought, I mean, this is a huge campus, and it's hard to reach out and touch every, corner of it. But I mean, has there been a, club or organization that's kind of stood out to you?
I went to the Veterans Club, and I got a lot of great questions from them, and they're non-traditional students, and so I've heard questions from them from a different perspective. You know, they don't go to these ASUN events and these concerts, and it was really great to get feedback from them about them wanting to be involved in this university and how their club could be more involved.
Okay.
Shifting gears back a little bit, earlier in the show you mentioned that you've been attending a lot of different events every night to, just work on the campaign. Can you maybe discuss some of the events that you've been doing?
Okay, these last few weeks I've really just been hitting clubs, organizations, all the Greek organizations. Events. I've kind of had to prioritize which ASUN events I can and cannot attend. I make time to go to the Senate meetings still, though. Last week was a intense week, so still making time for that.
I know that this school year there's been quite a few senators who have been removed from office for missing office hours, and that seems to be a pretty significant thing when our student money is going towards this budget that the senators make use of. What do you have to say about the current workings of ASUN and the Senate?
This is one of the big things that I would like to change next year, is holding ASUN officers more accountable in our outreach efforts, in working with students, in representing the students. I think that's a big problem this year, is that students aren't being represented. We're not reaching out to our constituents. So next year I would like to hold meetings monthly to hold officers accountable, because I think that's very important.
Also, coming from a more arts perspective for the entire campus and city as a whole, I know that Reno is constantly undergoing this shift towards maybe more of a college town as opposed to like a dingy casino area. And do you plan on getting involved with the arts community at all to just maybe more integrate the campus with the city, or what are your thoughts on that?
I would love to work with the arts community to do that. I would really love to shift towards that, and I think that's a very large aspect of getting this to be a university town, is to focus more on the arts.
And speaking about the arts too, one of the main obligations is, if you were to be elected vice president, is working with the publications and the other media outlets. What are your plans with furthering their growth? ASUN still subsidizes some of the budget for Inside Brushfire and Wolfpack Radio. What are your ideas for expanding their operations?
Well, it's great that those offices are all located within the ASUN offices as well, because next year, if I'm elected vice president, I plan to have good working relationships with each of these departments. I think it's very important to check in constantly and see what are the needs of these departments. So, just sitting down first thing, if I'm elected, and seeing what these departments need and what you guys want to grow and expand.
One of the more interesting aspects of this entire election season is obviously Royce's campaign, where he is actively saying that he does not want to win. And if he won, he's still due to graduate this year. Assuming, theoretically, if he was elected and you were elected, but then he moves on, what would your plans be, not having a president?
If Royce were elected and I were elected and he was president and then graduated, I would become president, and I am prepared for that, and I know that I can do the job and that I am ready for it.
Could you maybe outline some of the things you would do differently as president as opposed to VP, or why you're currently just running for VP instead of president?
I really respect Caden as a candidate, and I think Caden is a great candidate for president, and he loves this university, and I would love to work with him as vice president, which is why I'm not running for president. He would do a great job as president. I would do a great job as his vice president.
Now, going back to possibly you theoretically being president if Royce got the position then left, what would be some things you would do, or what would you have to do to look for a vice president? Could you maybe go into this a little bit?
Okay, things I would do as president. I think I have a great working relationship with faculty and administration, with the professional staff in ASUN, and I really would work to have clear lines of communication between all these different departments and everything. That's what I would focus on next year.
Okay, and I think this is a lot of conditional stuff, but this is a really unprecedented situation. Obviously last year you had two really good tandems running together that had big lengthy resumes as far as their background at ASUN and on campus goes. And so kind of coming back to that, what's the overall message that you're trying to send to the students? Because it is really difficult to reach out to the multiple parts of campus, but what's the overarching theme to your campaign, and ultimately if you do win?
I want to engage the students, and I want students to want to be at this university the way that I want to be at this university. I'm lucky enough to be involved, and I had someone reach out to me and get me involved, and I'm so thankful for that experience. And I want students to want to be here, to want to be in clubs and organizations, to want to be in the Reno community. So I really want to focus on student engagement and getting students to want to be at this university.
Thank you so much for your time, Jessica. It was a pleasure to have you on. Could you maybe tell everyone where you could be reached before we go?
Yes, thank you guys for having me. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. It's at Salsman 4 VP. Also on Facebook, Salsman 4 VP as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time,
Yeah,
and good
thanks,
luck
Jessica.
with the rest of the campaign. We will be right back with Quinn Jonas. Don't go anywhere, guys. And we are back. For those of you just tuning in, you are listening to the Nevada Sagebrush Rundown, the weekly radio show where we discuss all the happenings on campus. We are hosted here by Wolfpack Radio. You can check us out online at NVWR 1700 AM or online at wolfpackradio.org. This week, as I said before, it's a very special week. We have the 2 vice presidential and 2 presidential candidates on that are running for ASUN this coming year. And now we have our 2nd vice presidential candidate, Quinn Jonas. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Really excited to have the opportunity to speak here and excited about it, WPR.
It's a pleasure to have you on. We're going to be jumping right into it now, and I'm just going to ask a little bit of background info. Tell me about yourself.
Absolutely. My name's Quinn. I'm a first-year senior. I'll be taking a victory lap, but I'm a dual major in political science and English with a minor in computer science, a nerd of all trades. I'm currently a senator for the College of Liberal Arts and the ASUN Public Affairs Chair, and a candidate for vice president.
Now, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your motivations for running?
This is kind of a story. When I first came to this university, it was my first choice. And, I was kind of apathetic when I was here on campus. And the more I got involved with my fraternity, with the intercollegiate debate team, a lot of different clubs, the more I started liking my university. And so then I wanted to have an active hand in making my university better. So it's kind of an extension of that original desire that I found so much pride in my university that wasn't there. And so I don't want kids like me who were there in the beginning to continue to be me without that opportunity to be engaged on campus.
Yeah. And so, Quinn, we all know that you're from Elko, so shout out to Eric Uribe right now as a fellow Sagebrusher, both Elko High alumni. And then, Quinn, let's talk about the vice presidential position. So vice president of ASUN is usually the big link between the association and the publications. Mm-hmm. If you were to be elected, what are the big things that you want to improve the publications?
So I've actually, as a senator, hearing the presentations put on by the individual publications that the vice president is liaison for, been really impressed by the internal cooperation of these publications. The 4 houses, as they like to call themselves, has been doing an amazing job in coordinating amongst themselves. And one of the things in my belief in style leadership is not to pretend to be an expert where I'm not. So I would like to maintain as much autonomy as I could for the individual directors as far as what their direction is, what they want to achieve, and what they want to accomplish. So then that way I can serve as an opportunity for them to ask what they want from the executive board, what they need from me. So that way I won't pretend to run a radio show when there's people who know better than I do.
Speaking on a more broader scale, what are some of your overarching goals for either the campus or Reno as a whole?
So I have 4 major goals. I'll be very brief. One is to expand the PAC internship grant program, a 3-step plan to do that, the time of offerings, the number of offerings, and then a stipend program for international and national internships. And then my second major goal is to continue my work as a senator and modifying 15 to finish to be something that works for students instead of students working for it. And then my last 2 goals, one is to find a way ASUN can interact with clubs and orgs here on campus outside of just club support funding hearing, co-sponsoring signature events so we can benefit the students and the clubs and orgs. And lastly, take an active role in managing the Gender Equity Task Force or revitalizing it as it has stalled this current year.
One thing that we've noticed in the past several months, just kind of the school year as a whole, is it was interesting that you mentioned apathy earlier, because I know that several senators have been censured because they were missing so many meetings, and it seems that there may be a state of apathy in ASUN or just the Senate as a whole. Would you have any plans specifically to, promote more engagement and make, people accountable for their actions?
So one of the biggest things, and something, as a freshman senator, that I experienced was not necessarily knowing how to navigate ASUN. So what I want to do to improve accountability is make sure every senator is equipped with the tools necessary they want to achieve their goals, because from a candidate to a senator, the biggest change is how. Not just what, but how are they going to achieve what he or she said she was going to achieve as a candidate. So what I want to do is use my experiences as a senator to make sure every senator is equipped, and also sit down and understand that I've been through what they went through as a senator, and share that personal experience so I can more directly engage members individually, because I think it's an individual problem versus a collective problem as a whole.
So, unlike the presidential race, you and your opponent, Jessica Salsman, both have a good amount of experience inside of ASUN. What do you think are her strengths and also her weaknesses? I mean, as an opponent, what's your guys' background, personally and professionally?
Well, I kind of, I was overhearing Jessica when she was talking about it. We are, good friends on a level personally, and, kind of become better friends during the campaign because we see each other at almost every club and org we're speaking to. But I think one of her greatest strengths is her specialized experience within the Department of Legislative Affairs. That's a big part of the legislative affairs, or the big part of being a student representative is representing the students in outside governing bodies. And we're very similar in the fact that I chair the Public Affairs Committee, so our experience is on, an even more specialized line, parallels again. I think one of my biggest strengths is that I bring also experience involved in a lot of clubs and organizations outside of ASUN. So I kind of have the know-how of ASUN in addition to the eyes that are necessary for ASUN to improve, because sometimes if you're in a system for so long, you don't necessarily know how to improve it. But Jessica's been doing a great job this year at every Department of Legislative Affairs event.
Can you maybe go into a little bit more detail about the clubs and orgs that you've been involved with and what you've done with them?
Absolutely. So the first kind of club and organization chronologically that I was involved with was the Intercollegiate Debate Team, and went to nationals, was the treasurer for the Nevada Debate Union Club, and just participated in that way, competing across universities, mainly across the West Coast. As a whole, I'm a member of the Kappa Sigma Social Fraternity and served as a campus activities chairman for roughly a year. Took a break when I was a senator so I can focus on that position, and also was temporarily, or for a little bit, a member of Collegiate FFA and helped out with their events and kind of their views on campus. And lastly, I'm a member of Nevada Esports.
Really, I actually know that club. I was involved with them the first year, so shout out to them, definitely.
So, in this election year, it's a little different from other years. It's pretty unprecedented. We have a scenario where, theoretically, if one of the presidential candidates, Royce Feuer, were to win, he would graduate also this spring, and then the vice president would assume that position. What are your plans? If you would be to be elected to vice president, and then 2, you would have to go into that scenario. Do you feel that you're qualified in that situation, or what are your thoughts on that?
So kind of, I'm pulling for Caden the whole way, just that for there in the beginning, and hoping that situation doesn't necessarily happen because I've been experienced to his work ethic. What I hope to do, though, if that situation were to occur where Royce and I would also win, I'd probably sit down, take a deep breath, take a strong shot of espresso, and realize the students place in their trust to represent their needs and their concerns. So I'd continue with my goals as vice president, but also rely heavily on either the directors appointed under Royce's tenureship in this hypothetical situation, or appoint my own directors who specialize in those fields. So I, again, will rely on their knowledge, their specialized knowledge in departments, so they can make those individual departments better. I'd like to use my experience as chairing a committee to bring a lot of opposing views, a lot of, sometimes polar opposite views together when it comes to budgetary stuff, to make a cohesive unit and an effective executive branch.
Now, I have one final question. Obviously, a lot of the candidates throughout the years, they have these wonderful but very overarching long-term goals. What immediate goals would you have upon coming into office that you could just start immediately working to implement?
So the first thing would be a matter of time, would be for the PAC internship grant program. If we're going to expand it, the current director of the program, Elizabeth Loon, is at capacity, and she's the head of the Career Studio as well. I'd hate to lose her as the Career Studio, so the first thing would be opening up a search for a graduate assistant who would be able to oversee that program so it could expand. That's just a logistic of how it's going to happen. Secondarily, I'd like to work on the Gender Equity Task Force, get that up and running so we can have actionable items over the summer. So eventually we can ask students what they would like to see for a center that addresses issues of gender equity. What do the students want out of the center, not just what I think they want.
Right.
Well, we don't have anything else for you, Quinn, but thanks for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come and chat with us.
Can you maybe tell everyone where you can be reached?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I can be reached anytime you see me around campus with a coffee, but also quinnjonas.com. There's an Ask a Question module specifically for this, and I'll answer them on social media. Also, Quinn Jonas for ASUN on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me on social media, but happy to chat about anything.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the rest of the
Thanks for
campaign.
coming by, Quinn.
Oh, thank you guys so much for having me.
We will be right back with the presidential candidates. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Nevada Sagebrush Rundown.
We're like crystal. We break pieces. I'm a poor man. If you leave me, I'm applauded, then forgotten. It was summer, now it's autumn. I don't know what to say, you don't care anyway. I'm a man in a rage with that girl I betrayed. Here comes love, it's like honey, you can't buy it with money. Not alone anymore. You shook me to the core. You shook me to the core. Like crystal, it's not easy with your love. You could beat me. Every man, and every woman needs someone. So keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming. Keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming. I don't know
Welcome back. For those of you just tuning in, you're listening to the Nevada Sagebrush Rundown, the weekly radio show where we discuss all the happenings on campus and just around the city of Reno. We are from the Nevada Sagebrush, of course. We publish our weekly newspaper every Tuesday. You can pick up a copy pretty much anywhere around campus or online at nevadasagebrush.com. And speaking of online, we are, of course, hosted here by Wolfpack Radio, which you can also find online at wolfpackradio.org or on the AM airwaves at NVWR 1700 AM. For the first half hour of the show, we were sitting down and talking to the two vice presidential candidates for the upcoming elections that are happening in ASUN at UNR. And now we're going to be moving on to the presidents. Our first candidate that we have on is Royce Feuer. How are you doing, Royce?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. It's good to hear from you.
It's good to hear from me, too.
Royce, what did you bring in with you to the studio?
I brought in with me my my backpack full of stuff, kind of like how Barney has his bag.
Okay.
And I pulled out specifically my Charmin Ultra Soft double ply toilet paper. Cha-cha-cha Charmin. Feel the difference, guys. This stuff is good. This is what I'm going to be blowing my nose with throughout the show, and hopefully not.
Now, is it symbolic to your campaign? And your campaign's a very unprecedented one. I mean, maybe we'll talk about the Charmin after you kind of explain to the listeners what your campaign is about this year and how it's different from prior ASUN presidential campaigns.
You're saying it's different?
Yeah,
Can you guide me on what you mean there?
It's a little unprecedented. So essentially, I mean, Tyler, you can also chime in as well.
Most candidates want to win. You do not.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that is, I guess, a little different.
Minor difference.
Yeah, I don't want to win this campaign at all. I'm just here having a good time and supporting what ASUN is all about and being involved with ASUN. You know, I've done a lot of things in college. I've played rugby. I joined a fraternity. I'm in one of the school's founding disciplines, and so amongst other things. And so I'm like, you know what? I didn't really do any ASUN stuff. Let me check that off. But of course, there was probably the biggest reason why I'm running is because without me, my opponent would be going unopposed, and that's not right. It's not American. And red, white, and blue. Go democracy.
Do you think that there may be an issue of apathy if there's only one other person running and you're basically running not really to even try to win?
An issue of apathy as in on my side of things?
No, not. Well, you can answer that too if you'd like, but I'm more interested in, do you just think people don't care enough to run?
Yeah, I when I applied, I did it 15 to 20 minutes before the deadline. I waited. I was like, there's nobody applying. Refresh the page. And that to me, there's rumors of people saying that this looks bad that I'm running. And say what you want, folks, but I think it looks way worse when you only have one person running. My 6 years here, yes, I am a 6-year student. For those of you listening, wondering how old this lovely voice you're hearing is, I have never seen a presidential race go uncontended. And that's bad, in my opinion. And I think ASUN needs a little bit of rejuvenation and a little bit of spark. And I think my opponents have done so far. I've heard good things about him in ASUN, but I don't think it's okay to have just giving the position over to somebody, because then I think it's taken for granted. He's had to work hard against, I think he has at least, against the brilliance behind my campaign, right? Of course, that's said sarcastically. But he has had to work, and he has had to campaign, and he has had to make promises, and he has had to tell people what he's going to do. He wouldn't have to do that if I wasn't running, and I think he can do a great job.
I know that Caden has definitely been campaigning very hard. He's put on some events that had a very good turnout. You see his signs all over campus. And near the beginning of the election season, I actually couldn't find any signs of yours. Now I've seen a couple, and it's actually, I think the last time I checked yesterday, you had fairly sizable, bigger following on at least Facebook than your opponent. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think people are really intrigued by what we have going on. I have 2 signs on campus. I believe Caden has 6. Who's keeping count, right? One of them is a double sign, so you can count 3. We hope to put up another double sign tomorrow. Spoiler alert. So look for that one in front of the Knowledge Center. And as far as the following goes on Facebook, you know, it's how you reach out to your voters and how you reach out to people that are going to be involved, and how you spread a message isn't done with a campaign sign as well as it is on social media. So we've been doing a big social media push. We have several videos up on our social media page. And partially the fact that in the beginning you saw nothing, well, that was just us being procrastinators, and we all are in college. And if anybody wants to call in and say they're not, I will call you a liar.
So talking about your campaign, I mean, what are your scenarios like that you're thinking about in your head? Like, what if you do actually win? I mean, has that thought gone through your head?
You know, it's one of those things you don't want to think about. You really just want to say, gosh, I hope what we're doing is going to get the message across. If I win, first off, I'll be on a plane on the way to Toronto, Canada next week for a mining engineering department function. So I might be Skyping into the session. So I won't be back for 10 days. So I'll have a lot of time in tropical Toronto to check out what options I have. I just don't think about it. If I win, man, I did something wrong in my campaign. I did something probably really wrong. Maybe I need to make the don't bigger on my signs under don't vote for Royce.
Obviously, you winning would have big implications. Whoever wins is going to have huge implications for the university. If you do win, would you decide to come back to Reno for an additional year to be the president, or would you still leave and give it basically the position to whatever VP is elected?
You know, that's a good question. I do graduate in May. Granted, I can kind of pull off good grades in my last few classes. The options are really open. I've applied to grad school, and if I get accepted, then I have to decide, do I want to go and how do I pay for it for something that's $50,000 a year. There's other options on the table too. But yeah, no, it's definitely something that's not out of the possibility range. So
are you not certain though?
No. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow.
So but the overarching message is still don't vote for Royce.
Right, don't do it.
Okay.
So make sure, let the don't resonate.
So Royce, you and I have known each other for a long time. I mean, since,
a few years
now. And I mean, you're also kind of a historian. I mean, obviously you cited the rugby club and, Sigma Nu, and also being a part of the mining engineering program.
Right. So,
I mean, you're very ingrained in the culture of the University of Nevada. I mean, where do you think your campaign ranks for the prior ASUN presidential campaigns over the years?
Depends how you're ranking it. If you're talking about color, yellow is the best color in the world.
Okay.
This is a scientific fact. Whoever invented that color deserves mad props, and there should be a holiday for that man or woman or whatever. We have bathrooms for the whatevers now. So I don't. It just depends. When you say how does it rank?
I guess as far as
because
being unconventional goes.
Oh, yeah. Well, have you heard of anybody else doing this?
The only one I can think of was in, I believe it was 1983, sometime in the early 80s, Bill Hama ran, and he was in his 30s or 40s, and so he was an older guy, and he actually won ASUN president.
Yeah.
So really interesting.
Bill Hama, that guy. I do know of Bill Hama.
He still writes into the Sagebrush every now and again.
Oh, really? Okay. So he was 30 or 40. Well, and UNLV, their class president, right, last year, wasn't he 30?
Yeah, he was older. Yeah, I don't. His name is escaping me now, but
yeah, who cares about them anyway?
Yeah.
They suck. Yeah, no, I would think as far as it being unconventional. I mean, I don't know all the campaigns that have happened, but I would definitely say that it is a little strange, and the situation that I was faced with made it that way. So, yeah. Don't vote for me.
Now, you mentioned earlier in the show you actually complimented your opponent, but I've also seen on social media quite a few people refer to your campaign as a smear campaign of sorts. You've seen the sign obviously kind of being a parody of the Big Future Little Doubt. You've seen the Not in Coffin and Keys thing on your sign.
Right.
Do you want to comment on those accusations?
First off, smear campaign. What does that mean?
Your campaign is more basically to slander your opponent than to promote yourself?
No. It actually, I would think, if anything, it slanders me more than anybody else on campus. First off, the big yellow one, the big yellow and red one, I don't see how that can slander anybody, because all I'm pointing out is things about myself. The second one, I can kind of see where you're saying, oh, that slanders him. But if anything, people will pass that sign without looking and think that's two signs of my opponents. And who does it make you think of when you see my sign not voting for? Oh, who to vote for? Oh, it was the other guy's sign. Bam, there you go right there. That's some psychology stuff for you right there that you probably weren't even aware of, but that's the brilliance behind my campaign team. We said, what kind of sign can we make that makes people say, don't vote for Royce, and at the same time make it stick out, and so we went with that.
Yeah, then talking about your campaign and whatnot, I mean, what are people saying to you about this? I mean, are they confused? I mean, what are the people, your constituents, your fellow peers in the University of Nevada saying to you about this? And also, maybe what has the administration said to you about this?
The administration has said nothing to me so far, and if they'd like to say something to me, please do it. I'd like to hear what you have to say. As far as other people go that have talked to me, I'm feeling a lot of support from people. They come up and they say, hey, I'm not going to vote for you. And I say, good. And I shake their hand or give them a high five, depending on the situation. If they're good looking, I'll give them a hug. It all just depends. But they're kind of, they're bought in to our message. So.
Now,
go ahead, Tyler.
With all of the ruckus caused by you not wanting to actually win, I think a lot of people seem to be forgetting that this is still a presidential race. And as you've said earlier, if you won, you are still somewhat entertaining the possibility of coming back. So could you maybe go into a bit of detail about your goals that you would have if you are elected?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Well, if I am elected, well, here's some of the things I'm going to do. First off, I'm going to look at the budget and maybe mess with it a little bit, okay? Maybe I'll decrease some things. Maybe I'll increase some things. Who knows? I'll look at the numbers. Second off, I'm going to appoint people, all right? That's a huge part of something that I believe in is right. Number 3, in terms of any kind of legislation or proactive moves, one of the biggest issues on this campus needs to be addressed. We don't want to ignore it anymore. I know it might sound embarrassing, but it can't be ignored. And that is that we have terrible toilet paper. And that is why I'm here with my Charmin Ultrasoft double-ply toilet paper to show you guys, and to show and prove to myself continuously how awesome it is and well-performing it is. And if you guys would like a few squares before I leave, you're more than welcome to. It's excellent to blow your nose with and wipe yourself with, really. And it has other applications as well. So and so we're gonna definitely maybe look into that. As far as when you said I'm going to be possibly staying here, that's, again, I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, we are not able to accept campaign contributions such as your wonderful toilet paper, but we would like to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for sitting and chatting with us, Royce.
Yeah, no.
Before we send you off, could you maybe tell us where you can be reached?
Where I can be reached? Go on Facebook and type in Don't Vote for Royce. That's the only Don't Vote for Royce page on Facebook. At Twitter, Don't Vote for the number 4. Royce, and the other 4 is FOR, and same with Instagram. It's for social media purposes. Don't vote for Royce, and that's a good way you can reach me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for
Good luck with
having
the
me.
rest of the campaign.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're gonna be taking another brief musical break, and we will be right back with the final presidential candidate, Caden Fabbi. Don't go anywhere.
The loneliness
And we are back. For those of you just tuning in, you are listening to the Nevada Sagebrush Rundown, the weekly radio show where we discuss all the happenings on campus and around the city of Reno. We're from the Nevada Sagebrush student newspaper. We publish our paper every Tuesday. You can pick it up pretty much anywhere around campus, but if you happen to miss it, you can find us online at nevadasagebrush.com. And speaking of the internet, we are of course hosted here by Wolfpack Radio. You can find the station online at wolfpackradio.org or on the AM airwaves at NVWR 1700 AM. If you've been listening to the rest of the show, you know that we are having a very special radio show this week because we've been interviewing the two vice presidential candidates, and we just finished interviewing the first of two presidential candidates that are all running in the upcoming election for ASUN and just the university as a whole. And I'm very pleased to welcome the final presidential candidate that we have today, Caden Fabbi. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm excited to get the word out, be here on the show, and talk to students. It's been the best part of this whole entire process.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to have you on the Rundown, Caden. And let's not forget, Caden is the current Speaker of the Senate. So let's talk about your campaign goals and also your qualifications that you feel like that you're going to be the best candidate for president.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with my qualifications. So, I'd always been involved with student council my whole entire life. Since, let's see, I started in second grade, I think, was when I was class representative. Continued on to third grade, and then in fourth grade I ran for student body historian, and I lost. Tragic, right? You thought that would be the end of it. But no, I came back strong. I was able to be in a leadership class in middle school, and then I came into high school. I was elected freshman president of my high school, and I was sophomore president, eventually worked my way up to be the student body president of my high school. With that being said, I came to this university without any intention of getting involved with the student government. I thought that college was the place where I was going to work on my major and figure out what I wanted to do with my life, right? And I found something that I want to do for my life, and that's being involved in higher education. And so, ASUN kind of just happened. I had a couple of friends that were getting involved and seemed super interesting, and the more I learned about the organization, the more I really grew to love it and to understand the true impact that it can have in the student body and in the community in the city of Reno and in the entire state. And so I ran to be the senator for the College of Liberal Arts in my freshman year, and I was elected. And then I was the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee that year, which was a great experience. And I was able to rerun this last year, was elected Speaker of the Senate, and here I am today.
Yeah, and then, I'm going to have to step out, so I'm going to throw it to the wolves with Tyler here, but I'm sure he'll be nice to you. But, talk about your campaign goals and, how do you feel like that you can achieve them? Obviously, ASUN very well. I mean, more than your opponent, obviously, Royce Feuer, just based on, obviously the known experience. And talking about your campaign goals and how are you going to achieve them, ultimately engage the student body that's reaching almost 20,000 right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think you bring up a good point. I think that this is a critical time for our university. We have a lot of students that are very, very engaged on our campus in a lot of different ways, and engaged in ASUN. So that's why I think this election is so important. My vision and what I would like to do in this next year is not just going to impact us today. It's going to impact the students of tomorrow. That's why we came up with Big Future Little Doubt. It's because we're trying to hit 22,000 students by the year 2020, and so us as the associated students need to be able to accommodate for that. And so that's what my entire platform runs around. It's about making the student experience better, not only for us today, but also hopefully for our little brothers and sisters and for our future kids that come here and can see this university prosper and be even greater than it is now. And so first thing I want to do is institute a new long-term vision for the associated students. So it'll encompass a lot of different things. The current long-term vision that's there is called Joint Vision 2017, and Joint Vision, most of the things in that document have been completed, and so that's why I think that it's time for us to institute a new one and one that will impact students for years to come. And so in this long-term vision, a couple of things that I'd like to include. The Joe Crowley Student Union was built for a student population of 15,000. And so soon enough, if we haven't already, we're going to be running out of space. And so one of the things I'd like to advocate for in this 10-year vision of mine is I'm going to advocate for more student activity space for organizations to get together, meet, and collaborate. I think that's so important. In addition to that, I think that we need it's not even a want, it's a we need additional classroom and lab space on this campus. And in addition to that, I think that we could use some more recreational and field space. There's a recommended square footage per student that you're supposed to have on a higher education campus, and we're well below that even with the EL Week and Fitness Center coming. And so I'd like to advocate for some more space for students to be physically active. And then in addition to that, I think there are some ASUN services that could use some enhancing right now. I think the campus escort could use some work. I'd like to offer some more services through Inkblot marketing, and I'd also like to offer some new services. And all these ideas come from me simply researching other universities and figuring out how we can implement them on our campus. And so I'd like to institute an Office of Volunteer Opportunities. So there's a student worker whose job will be to specifically consolidate volunteer opportunities in the community, because we have heard more and more that students want to be in the community giving back. And further, I'd like to create an office of off-campus housing so that when students are ready to move off campus, they have a point person to go to who can let them know the procedures that they need to follow or who they need to contact, what they can do in order to move off campus. And these stem from student concerns at the end of the day, from things that students have said to me. That being said, off the I-80 in Virginia in the next few years, we're going to be having what's going to be called the Gateway Plaza. Currently, there's a bunch of hotels there, tattoo parlors, a bunch of other nonsense. That all eventually is going to be knocked down, and it's going to be a new entryway to our university. There's going to be a bunch of open spaces. It's going to be very bicycle friendly. But what's I think the best part about it is there's going to be a ton of businesses and startups there, and so I see this as an opportunity for us as students to advocate for student-run businesses. I think it's so important for students to not only learn in the classroom but also learn outside of the classroom, because ultimately that's where in my opinion, the best learning happens, and that's what's really going to prepare us for the workforce in the future. And so I will advocate for student-run businesses, particularly in that area. And the last part I'd like to talk about is simply revitalizing Nevada student traditions. I think it's sad year after year since I've been here that students aren't as excited as they possibly could be for weeks like Homecoming Week, Mackey Week, and Beat UNLV Week, and that's simply because our events do not appeal to a huge, large portion of our student population. And so while I want to keep the competition aspect in it, I think that is an important part, and that's a tradition that we've had for a long time. I want to put on events that people actually want to go to, that they don't have to be there just because they need to get attendance points for their team. I want to put on events that people are excited about, that our community is excited about, because ultimately that's what Homecoming is all about. It's about tying in our community and our alumni with the students at this university and celebrating how great we are. And so those are just, a couple of my goals. There really is a lot that I'd like to do in this next year. I've been involved, like I mentioned, in this organization for a couple of years now, and I see a lot of ways that we can improve. And so I'm very, very excited about this next year.
Now, obviously, these are some very ambitious long-term goals, and I don't think anyone would disagree that these would be wonderful additions to the university. I know that a lot of students, that at least I've known during my tenure here, are sometimes disillusioned because there's so many long-term goals, but they never see anything immediately impactful. Could you maybe discuss some of the more immediate plans? You mentioned some stuff about homecoming, but do you have any more immediate plans that people would notice comparatively shorter after you had taken office?
Right. Absolutely. So first I want to touch on one of the first things that I learned when I entered this organization was the importance of being visionary, because the turnover is so ridiculous every single year. You'll have a year in office, you'll complete hopefully something, and then usually you'll be out, and so I think it's important to set plans that will impact people for years to come. With that being said, there are a number of things that I'd like to do in this next year that will impact the student body of today. So I mentioned the Nevada student traditions. I've also noticed within my years here in ASUN that there's often a gap in communication between students and the ASUN. And so in order to fix that within my first 30 days of taking office, and this won't be completely fixed just like that. This is a cultural change essentially, but I'm providing the university and ASUN with the resources and the students with the resources that they need in order to engage better with ASUN. And so within my first 30 days of holding office, I plan on launching an ASUN tech service. It'll be opt-in that students can sign up for. We're going to push it really, really hard at orientation next year so we can get a lot of freshmen engaged and signed up. And hopefully that will help. It's not going to be one of those annoying things. It's simply going to be, us letting students know about the important work that we do, because we hear time and time again that they simply don't. In addition to that, I want to launch a student outreach team, and those will be student jobs, and their sole purpose, again, will be to go around and inform students about what we do. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, which I actually haven't talked a whole lot about my campaign, but one of my main goals is creating a culture of leadership development and growth. And so I've seen a number of models of mentorship programs and leadership programs at other universities, and the one that I liked the most was at the University of Washington, ASUW. And what they did was they took freshman students and they paired them up with, it essentially was volunteers, students who were leaders on the campus, who were involved and engaged in something. And so they paired them up, and they had that kind of a mentorship program. They would meet regularly, tell them, give them assignments, tell them kind of what's next, how to develop more as a leader, et cetera. And so that's another thing that I think can be immediately impactful in this next year. And the third thing that I'll talk about, gosh, more and more things are keep popping in my head. Actually, the first thing that I would do if put into office actually is I would ban plastic water bottles from ASUN programming events. I think it's so important that we are becoming more and more of a green campus. And after visiting UC Davis, we are very far behind. And so I think it's important that ASUN sets an example with programming events and says, hey, we're doing this. Hopefully, the university will follow suit. Let's see. Yeah, I guess that's good for now. I know I'm thinking of other things, but we could come back to it.
I do find it interesting that you mentioned the sort of disconnect that there occasionally seems to be between students and those in ASUN. And I know that in the last several months especially, there have been several senators that have been censured because they were missing so many hours. And I know that disconnect and just general apathy going on with some people in ASUN could have a pretty severe negative impact on the university. Could you maybe discuss either just student apathy as a whole, student apathy in clubs and orgs, but especially student apathy in ASUN?
Yeah, it absolutely exists. But what I think is great about this election and what we're doing is that and honestly some shortcomings that ASUN has had in the past couple months. Students are more engaged than ever in ASUN. I'm expecting a record voter turnout next week, and I am stoked about it because those students are already engaged, and we can follow up with them and plug them in even more. This year, for the first time, maybe in ASUN history, I don't know, but it's certainly as long as I know, and I've looked back a couple years, for the first time we have competitive races in every single senatorial college, and I think that is tremendous. We don't have to fill any seats, and that is a step in the right direction. Students are understanding what we do, and so that is one thing that I can say truly from this session that I am proud of, that our senators got the word out there, did impactful work, and honestly, I think the Sagebrush contributed a lot to that as well. I think that writing stories about what we do and doing that on a regular basis, I think that has plugged in students even more, and so with that being said, I think the most important thing as far as getting student engaged and fixing that apathy then and there is at orientation. I think that we need to have an orientation for freshman students every single year that is engaging, and we make students think, why would I not want to be involved on this campus? It doesn't make sense. Everyone is. And so really, I think more than anything that it's a cultural movement. I also think that amping up things like the Blue Crew is going to be a big part of that. The Blue Crew is supposed to be the largest student organization on our campus. And they have often, have had their shortcomings, haven't been as engaged as they could possibly be, especially when you compare it to other student sections across the nation. So I think there's a number of ways that we can mitigate that, and I certainly will investigate those ways in this next year because I know certainly that it's an issue as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Maybe before you go, could you tell us all where you can be reached?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook, Caden Fabbi for ASUN President. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat, new fun thing this year, at Fabbi for Prez. Or you can email me. My email address is caden@nevada.unr.edu. If you haven't signed up for your student email address, do it. Go to unr.edu/activate. Sorry, shameless plug. Got to do it. Sign up for your student emails.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. This has, of course, been the Nevada Sagebrush Rundown. If you want to find out more about us, our paper, and our organization, you can find it online at nevadasagebrush.org. And if you want to hear more about the candidates that we've been interviewing for the past hour, you can find out more about them at nevadaasun.com/elections. This is pretty much... Terrence, do you have anything else to say?
No, I think that these candidates are definitely promising. I think that all of them really stepped up to the table tonight and told us what to expect, what they're working on, what their ideas are, and I think everyone did it in a really amazing manner. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen, and I'll just be waiting here. I know what my vote's going to be. How about you, Tyler?
When we publish our staff ed on that, that'll be my answer. How about that?
Got it.
Terrence, where can we reach you on social media?
You can reach me on Twitter at _Terrence B, and also on Instagram at Terrence Bynum, and then also on Facebook at just Terrence Bynum.
You can find me on Twitter at Tyler Hercio, and you can find the Sagebrush on Twitter at the Sagebrush and on Instagram at NVSagebrush. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back next Tuesday at 7 with our normal programming. We'll be discussing the dining guide that we had this week. We'll be discussing the ACP conference that we went to, and so much more. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Hello, and this is Junshi
and Allie from
The Sound of